All right. Good morning. Good to see you. Can I confess, since we're a smaller group and we didn't have any time with children, I'll take some off-script moment to confess. I always feel a little bit of cognitive dissonance, or there's some discomfort for me being in a primarily white church when we sing the Black national anthem, "Lift every voice and sing." That last phrase, "true to our God, true to our native land," that can be taken in such a strange way if we remove it from its context. So I always just want to hear that was a song written by and for people who'd been stolen from native lands, and then were committing themselves to working on making this their home. So I want us to just, whatever our place in life, I want us to position ourselves into the question of what it means to build a land where all are actually included and free. That's just my little cognitive dissonance, perhaps. Anyway, we're starting with a modern reading before we hear the ancient reading, as usual. This is a poem by a Polish poet. I'm probably butchering her name, but it's something like Wisława Szymborska. And it was translated by Joanna Tresiak, whose name I'm probably also mispronouncing. But Wisława Szymborska, the poet, was born in 1923 in Poland, so we can imagine what her childhood held as she was coming of age in Poland in the 1930s. This is, of course, later in life poem. It's called Miracle Fair. So I'm very encouraged by a poet who has lived through very difficult things and is embracing the idea that life itself is a miracle. Miracle Fair. Commonplace miracle. That so many commonplace miracles happen. An ordinary miracle. In the dead of night, the barking of invisible dogs. One miracle out of many, a small airy cloud, yet it can block a large and heavy moon. Several miracles in one, an alder tree reflected in the water, and that it's backward, left to right, and that it grows there, crowned down, and never reaches the bottom, even though the water is shallow. An everyday miracle. Winds, weak to moderate, turning gusty into storms. First among equal miracles, cows are cows. Second to none, just this orchard from just that seed. A miracle without a cape and top hat, scattering white doves. A miracle, for what else could you call it? Today, the sun rose at 3:14 and will set at 8:01. Not our time. A miracle less surprising than it should be. Even though the hand has fewer than 6 fingers, it still has more than 4. A miracle. Just take a look around. The world is everywhere. An additional miracle, as everything is additional. The unthinkable is thinkable. I just love that. Imagine the possibilities. The scripture this morning is from the prophet Jeremiah. We're returning to him. This is from around the middle of his book, Jeremiah 29, verse 1, and then verse 4 to 7. And if you wonder why they left out verse 2 and 3 in the assigned reading part, I'll tell you. Sometimes they leave out the juicy parts. Today they left out the boring parts. This is verse 1. Jeremiah sent a letter from Jerusalem to Babylon, to the surviving elders among the exiles, to the priests, the prophets, and all the other people Nebuchadnezzar had deported. That's verse 1. Then verse 2 and 3 just tell you the names of the 2 people who carried the letter and who they were related to. We're never going to remember any of that. So, the letter read, "Thus says Yahweh Almighty, the God of Israel, to all the exiles I deported from Jerusalem to Babylon, Build houses to live in. Plant gardens and eat what they grow. Marry and raise children. Find wives for your sons and husbands for your daughters, that they may bear children. Multiply while you are there. Do not decrease. Rather, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I exiled you. Pray to God for it, for if it prospers, you will prosper. Message to exiles. Can we do a temperature check on how you're feeling about living through these days? We can start by returning to that part of the opening sentences that had us breathe together. Don't do it yet. I mean, breathe. But what I want us to do while we're breathing, I'd like us to tap into feeling words. I'll give you about 30 seconds to breathe in silence, take stock of your feeling words about what it's like to live in these days. Okay, now, breathe. I didn't look at my phone, so I don't know if I gave you 30 seconds or not. But I'd like to hear, what are the words that were coming? You can just call them out or put them in the chat or unmute yourselves and say them, whatever works for you. But what words came to you about what it feels like to be living in these days? Anxious, aghast, scary, confusion, ambivalence, frustrated, shaken, disgusted, heartbreaking. Are there any? I'm just gonna look in the chat here. Oh, let's see. I get sadness, excitement, anger, joy, anxiety, peace, despair, grace, damnation, and hope. There's a lot of feeling words. Did I miss any while my back was turned? I don't hear as well when my back's turned. I don't Okay, these are our feeling words. So just notice the array of what we're feeling. I read an essay this week by the Presbyterian minister Mary Ann McKibben Dana, and no relation to Bill McKibben. I had to look that one up. But Mary Ann McKibben Dana, who wrote about a conversation that she had with another friend of hers who is also a pastor. And that friend told her that some of the folks in her church were what she said, pretty hair on fire right now. Though interestingly, they're often not the ones most directly affected by what's going on. And she unpacked that a little more by explaining, folks who are more hair on fire, I know, folks who are a little more hair on fire seem to have the luxury of watching things unfold from a somewhat safer distance. It's a privilege, in a way, to be offended or angered by every news story, but being less affected gives you license to be less grounded and less focused. These people are coming from a very compassionate, good place. They just haven't found their action steps. Let me be the first to say that I can see myself in that. I'm incredibly concerned about the fate of democracy in this country and around the world. I'm anxious about the notice that I'll get in the mail later this month or early next month about what my health insurance premiums are going to be for next year. But so far, my livelihoods have been steady. I still have time to read the newspaper every morning and decide how panicked or outraged I want to be. But the other day, Friday morning, I sat in on a call of Power Interfaith clergy and other faith leaders. And one of the pastors on the call talked about the child care program that runs out of his congregation. They offer care to about 170 kids while their parents are at work, somewhere in North Philadelphia. Their funding relies largely on state reimbursements, which they have not received in the more than 100 days since our legislator has illegally failed to pass a budget and is not reimbursing anyone. And it's going to be even complicated more under the federal shutdown. So after the power meeting, he was going to have to call together 15 employees of that child care program and let them know that unless and until funding came through, they were being laid off. And then he was going to have to let the parents of those 170 kids know that they're going to have to figure out child care alternatives. He doesn't have the luxury of distance. Those employees don't have the luxury of distance. Those parents don't have the luxury of distance. Nor do they have the luxury of getting outraged at every new report, because their concerns are more immediate. Despair and outrage alike can be the refuge of a certain amount of privilege. The privilege of not being in the direct line of fire, the privilege of distance, the privilege maybe of having potential escape routes. I think of that every time I'm in a conversation where it turns around to what country folks want to go to. I was reminded this week of a quote by Mohandas Gandhi, who knew a thing or two about struggling against oppressive systems. He said, I'm going to hold on to this one for a long while. He said, "When I despair, I remember that throughout history, the way of truth and love has always won. There have been murderers and tyrants, and for a time they can seem invincible. But in the end, they always fall. Think of it. Always. In the meantime, though, there's work to be done. Internal work and external work." I'd like to make the case that although this impacts us differently, we have to recognize that we are all in this together. Again, not that it impacts us equally or in the same way, but that it does impact us all. Some of us, like trans and non-binary folks, are facing legislative threats to their existence. They feel this deeply in their bodies. I think too of undocumented immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers who are being kidnapped off the streets by government agents, masked government agents, not to mention the legal residents and citizens who are getting abducted, detained, and released for the crime of having brown skin. Others of us, Joy Berge, I'm thinking of you, are watching lifetimes of advocacy unravel, waiting for economic impacts that we're certain are going to come, or just grieving deeply that the nation we thought we lived in is not the nation we are living in. What I'm trying to say maybe is that one way or another, all of us, to a person, we are each exiles, where we are, exiles from where we want to be living. And the scripture has some advice for exiles. Put down roots. That's what the prophet Jeremiah said, essentially. We can back up to a few weeks ago when we talked about the setting of Jeremiah's work. we'll say, well, let me first start. This reading came after a very dramatic showdown in the temple. Think of being in the church and somebody came in to start a big argument with me. Priscilla, don't think about it. So a showdown between wishful thinking and reality. So a few weeks ago, we looked at how Jeremiah lived at a time that was threatening and bloody because the Babylonian Empire was on the rise, and they had built up forces outside of Jerusalem, and then they laid siege to the city, and then they actively invaded. And as a prophet, he tried to tell the truth about the hard times that were coming, to prepare his people and to push them to be rooted in their shared story and their shared practices. So today's short reading comes at a point when Babylon had already invaded the nation and the city. They had carried off key leaders, both governmental leaders and religious leaders, carried them off to a different part of the empire to weaken the leadership infrastructure there. It's easier to keep control when you take off the people who are in charge of things. Jeremiah had been in the temple dramatizing the nation's plight by using his craftsmanship, creating a Jeremiah-sized wooden yoke, what they put on oxen or cattle when they're going to plow the fields. Put it on himself to say, this is what the nation is going to endure under Babylon. They're coming in, they're going to break us, we're in for a rough time. So buckle down. Another prophet named Hananiah came in to the temple. He took Jeremiah's yoke and he broke it. And he said, don't listen to this fool. Within 2 years, everything's going to be back to normal. Just don't worry about it. God's got us. It's all right. As tends to happen in the biblical stories, God told Jeremiah that Hananiah is going to die because he's telling pretty lies to the people that are keeping them unprepared. And sure enough, as tends to happen in the biblical stories, within the next year, Hananiah had cracked out. And Jeremiah sent a letter to the people who had been carried off, the government leaders, the exiles, the prophets, the priests. It said, hey, you exiles, this is serious. You are not where you want to be right now. But it's not hopeless. There is a lot that is outside your control, you exiles. But there are still things you can do, should do, must do in the midst of this. Build community. Take care of each other. Plan for a future. That's how you get through this, by putting down roots where you are and nurturing whatever shoots come up. I'm going to take us to that part of the world right now, but contemporary. Ahmed Abu Amsha has been following this principle of building even in exile. In Gaza, he's a Palestinian. Before the war started, he was a guitar teacher and a vocal teacher at the Edward Said National Conservatory of Music and at the American International School of Gaza and the Delia Arts Foundation. He had a lot of teaching gigs. He also had a home studio where he recorded music. During the 2 years of war, he lost his home. It was destroyed. He lost his recording studio. It was destroyed. He and his wife and their 5 children and their extended family, which I think I saw was about 50 plus people, they have been displaced again and again and again. Talk about exile, literal exile. But he found a guitar to borrow. And he still had his voice and his educator's heart. And so he started to visit the refugee camps, the shelters, and to find the children and to sing with the children. And out of this practice, he grew an initiative called Gaza birds singing. The image that I put on the bulletin is called a Palestine sunbird, a literal Gaza songbird. But his initiative is with kids, Gaza birds singing. He connected with some fellow musicians and educators. Together, they have helped the kids in the refugee camps learn how to sing, how to play instruments. He helps them to process the trauma by turning it into something life-giving, or at least starting to transform it into more than just the pain. To know that they're not alone and can create beauty, even amidst their suffering. He's got a bunch of songs up on videos of his songs up on a website called songsfromtherubble.com. In one particularly dramatic one, he takes the pitch of a surveillance drone, which are ever present. Wherever people are gathered, there are drones hovering over them, letting them know they're being watched, creating a sense of unease, and just an irritant to the ears. So he says we can't let that be the defining feature. So he listens to the drone, and then he starts to hum in the same pitch. And he sets this as the starting note of a song that he gets kids singing, teaching them to sing, use that as the bass note and to harmonize off it, to transform what is irritating them and frightening them into something that reclaims their power. I was very taken by a song called My North, which is a traditional Palestinian song that Abu Amsha arranged and then shot video for on a cell phone. The video includes a couple of devastating images of buildings falling, just being demolished. But it also shows the resilience and the determination of Abu Amsha and his fellow musicians and the young people who are singing with them. So I thought I'd have us watch that one right now. And I've put the link to the overall site, songsfromtherubble.com, in the chat for folks on Zoom if there was any issue with that. Making music in the context of refugee camps is powerful, the most powerful thing I've seen all week. We're obviously in a different circumstance. I don't mean to suggest that any of us in this congregation have experienced suffering like what people in Gaza have experienced. But I do mean to say we've got to lean into and hear Jeremiah's words to the exiles. I am hopeful that we're still at a point where we can defeat the authoritarianism that is trying to take hold. And I also know that we might not. But what we've got to do in either case is to care for one another, to plan for a future, to sing together, to listen to and stand alongside and take cues from those who are being most impacted now, to transform anxiety and suffering into something different, something hopeful, something that will outlast the tyrants who, in the end, always fall. Think of it, always. This is God's good news. Amen.